yeah, TempoBros with the first seed, get the first pick. Feed will lock in Greece. It's an interesting map in terms of the building characteristic because it feels like a 6-lapper map, but in a standard point A to point B finish. Brazil will be picked by TempoBros, followed by China. USA, map 4, and it will be the decider on France. So Greece, Brazil, China, USA, and France, your map order for this first of 3 games today.
These players have been around for a while. So when there is hi everyone. Well, I was like, oh, zoom in. When you're listening to me, you look at me, okay? But Greece is going to be definitely one of those.
You know what we need? At one point, we need to do the thing like the beat stare, like the you know, the beat stare, that the redeem that he has, where it's basically just a crash zoom on his face. And yeah, the production is looking a little bit funky today compared to the previous days. As I said, we were kind of down on a few people in terms of handling the production due to some unfortunate circumstances. But we will be there to bring you, of course, the coverage of all of the games from today. There will be down to 3 games. So we have Ragnarok versus TempoBros up first, and Ragnarok will be up at bat in a few moments with Halcyon as well. So we'll get some representation for the NCSA contingent. And then after that, at 7 p.m. CEST, that is Cup of the Day, of course, in Trackmania Standard Time, it is going to be another Div 2 game with Shift versus Onyx, Cockney and Flimsy versus Jadon and Josh. This will be also a very interesting match, I think.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And you don't even need to ask me to do any pre-predictions because you already know who I'm going to pick for that one. Not biased whatsoever.
No bias, guys.
No.
Now, speaking of predictions, we have 20 seconds to do it. Who do you see winning this TempoBros Ragnarok match? I'm thinking TempoBros, but it will be a 3-2 game.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to... I feel like Evon hasn't been really in the competitive scene as much as the rest of the guys in the match. Evon has already proven multiple times that he can handle it, you know, rocking that Polish flag and stepping in for Polish players all the time. But I'm going to be with you. I think this is going to be a TempoBros. I'm hoping we'll see a 3-1.
All right, here we go then. It's time to let the field loose and go racing for the first time today. The match is a go. We'll be following along with Feed for the moment, who gets a solid start. He will be heading Evon as well as his teammate Azion by 74 milliseconds. We don't see anybody crashing into the checkpoint of checkpoint 3 chicane. I'm trying to find my words there, but you get what I mean. Into checkpoint 4, then the big ice slide. Who gets the best exit? It will be Evon with a beautiful ice slide exit, who will actually take the lead at the end of sector number 1 ahead of Azion through the first drop-down section, and we see a very heavy set landing on the part of Feed that will actually cost him plenty of time and will leave his teammate Azion in the wars with Evon for the lead, and Melio is a bit further down as well. So all the hopes of Ragnarok are currently pinned on Evon to try and validate the draw. He actually goes for a bit of a brake tap and thus slows down in the NASCAR turn, allowing Azion to take the lead before the start of sector number 3, and it will be the Frenchman getting a conservative line through that outside dirt turn at checkpoint number 12 and 13 to take the lead by a 10th and a half ahead of Evon as we go to the identity and the final staircase drop down, and Feed coming with a great amount of speed, trying to pile the pressure on Evon, and he might crack under that pressure. Yes, indeed, he slowed down dramatically midway through the identity. There might be all 3 side by side. There will be 2 side by side. Azion with a .144 and a .152 for Feed. It will be a 3-0, the first ace of the day for TempoBros.
And this is what I was a little worried about. The pressure that kicks in. Azion and Feed have been feeling that pressure for such a long time. They understand that competitiveness. Now, I will say Evon coming in and shutting me up, I love it. I will take it any day of the week when players can tell me to shut it and watch, and that's exactly what we saw in that round. Now, really hoping to see Melio be able to step up in this round. He did kind of put all the pressure onto Evon's shoulders, but now they are side by side in that second and third position. Azion, who was playing from a little bit from behind, is able to really show what he can do in the identity. So it's going to be very important for Melio and Evon to try and keep the pressure onto Feed, make the mistakes, and maybe look for a counter ace. But at the moment, it's not looking like it, because right now Azion is putting a lot of pressure onto Melio. Evon still trying to find his way to take on Feed, a little bit of a wider line, so it's going to be harder for him to get a really good dirt exit here. And just like that, Melio and Azion are going to be pushing up Feed with a great distance from the rest of the pack as we go into the identity. It's all going to be about how much you can control yourself in the air, flat landings to get as much exit speed as possible. And just like that, Azion, who was fighting from the back, is back up in front with the P2. That's a double ace.
Double ace for TempoBros, and yeah, as you said, Azion fighting from the back and very much playing the long game in terms of the rounds. Might not be as flashy in the first sector as Speed was, but was able to lay down the groundwork for a very solid final sector where he has the upper hand compared to the two Ragnarok players in the identity, allowing him to move up into second place again and thus validate that back-to-back ace for his team. 6-0. We're already at the halfway mark and then some on that opening map. As a reminder, we're on first to 10 scenario. If both teams reach 10 points at the same time, there will be overtime until there is a point difference, which will settle the map. But right now, it looks as though we might be heading towards a 4-round deal with the way the first 2 rounds happened. But as soon as I say that, Azion messed up the landing in the second drop down, clipped the inside, forced himself to respawn, and Feed, who was also very far down the order, is currently 4/10 down on the 2 Ragnarok drivers, who now have a chance to retaliate and slash the gap back down to 3 points. It's Evon leading his teammate by a 10.5 as we go to checkpoint 11, the start of sector number 3, and the dirt. I think with that gap that we see built up, yeah, we're not going to push it. We're not going to go for the full slingshot around the outside before checkpoint 13. It's still going to be a very handy lead of 3.5 tenths of a second for Evon Emilio compared to Feed. Can he try to pull something at the identity? He might be a bit too far back to make a move happen, I'm afraid, as we go on board with Feed, as we see a huge slowdown at the landing of the penultimate platform for Melio, and so Feed will salvage at least 1 point from this and put his team on map point number 1. Evon will win with a 1:14.065. In terms of pace, we're expecting to be here at the start of the day in Division 2. We're not expecting to be into the 1:13 mids right out of the gates.
Yeah, no, it's a little unfortunate for Melio there, just making a little bit of mistake in the identity. What could have been the counter ace to finally turn things around for Ragnarok, just not as much as they want. Still, 2 points on the board. It's not a complete shutout, but I'm pretty sure that Melio and Evon would have loved to get more points on the board, especially because TempoBros is now officially on track point. And I know it's early in the season, but it's always important to set yourself up for a good winning lead at the beginning of the league, because right now Ragnarok and TempoBros are actually side by side in the overall leaderboard of the season. So this is going to be a great moment, shall I say, to set the tempo for the rest of the season, as TempoBros is still up in front and being challenged by Melio 0.1 behind both of them. But Azion and Feed doing a really great job coming into the last bit of the track into the dirt. We've seen a little bit of mistakes coming in after this moment here, as the players are going to be setting themselves up, try to get as much speed into this nose down moment, get the car to bounce, and go into the identity. Azion and Feed have both shown what they can do in this identity, but we're seeing a little bit of cracks in the shield, but it's not going to be enough, and it's going to be an ace. Map 1 going to TempoBros.
10-2 the final score, and Azion clocking in at 1:13 at last of 0.865. And we saw that brief slowdown on the side of TempoBros in the mid part of the identity, just giving a bit of a glimmer of hope for Melio before snatching it back away from his hands, and thus compounding the misery of Ragnarok, who concede an 8-point lead to TempoBros on that opening map. And we're going to be moving on to Brazil, a modern interpretation of Surf, of course, map which was played in the 2023 World Championship, where the cars move from being actual cars to unlimited hydroplanes at 2 specific points during the track, and especially that final hairpin. We've seen plenty of damage across all the competitions this map has been used on, actually, Randomize.
Oh yeah, I mean, this this map, everything always seems fine until the identity, and it is, you know, you become a hoverboard. It's a little bit harder to control. It's not natural when you're sitting there driving a car all day and then all of a sudden you're just flying across the water. But yeah, now these guys have shown that they know what to do, but just being able to pull off everything in a smooth transaction. I mean, we might as well just play Valley at this point with the way these beaches are working on them, you know?
Yeah, that's kind of true. It does remind me of, it might as well play Valley or, what's the other? Lagoon. That's
Lagoon,
the
yeah.
Yeah, that's the one you're probably trying to refer to. But yeah, does feel like a bit of a Lagoon map, doesn't it? As we get past the pinch in the quarter pipe in the plastic, and then get a little bit of a gander at that final sector with Feed and Melio getting their bearings back on this particular map, which has seen a lot of chaos, especially in the League Cup with very high-profile knockouts, such with the likes of Otak, who took the gate, the penultimate gate before the final hairpin, and also a certain incident involving a certain Belgian player, but we're not going to go into that too deeply, as we now get started with round number 1 on map number 2.
I would love to see if maybe we can even get a Brazil on the scoreboard. But yeah, we'll have to see when that happens. A wet plastic, of course, folks, means you're going to have barely any grip, and the players do such a great job being able to handle that as we were going into the first water bounce. Evan, unfortunately, is going to be falling a little bit behind, so now it's going to be Melio once again taking on the 2 players on TempoBros as we go into this identity section here. Feed is doing everything he can, and that was what we're going to see at the end. A nice little pre-identity, I meant to say earlier, but Feed doing a good job still, being able to pull away. Melio going to be looking to try and get as much exit speed out of this one. He's going to have to really push, get close to that wall, and make sure that they get no slides as we officially go into the identity here. Fly under the dancers, and Feed doing a really good job getting some exit speed, but Azion ends up flipping over a little bit, and that not only puts him back, but puts him back into P4. Feed starts to do a little bit of a barrel roll, but makes it to the end with a 104.3. Evan going to be coming into P3. It's going to start us with a draw.
Yeah, and we've seen that a couple times as well. Some people getting a little bit too close over the sand berm and thus tilting their car, having the side of the car graze the water with their wheels, and that is enough to send them off the track. And we've seen plenty of people do that towards the ending, but this time it's not that much of a margin for error, and not so much error actually that can take place in that particular sector, so it will still somewhat work out for the finish unless you go really wrong on the setup. Then you got a lot more troubles to actually deal with, as we did see Melee with an appalling start and appalling exit of the loop, especially fall back down to P4, 1.1 seconds down compared to his teammate Evan, who's currently anchoring the lead for Ragnarok. And so far it will be TempoBros a bit on the defensive and a little bit stumped as to the round that Evan is currently putting on right now. May have some troubles of their own in the first sector as well that might be playing into this, but Feed and Azion are trying to tandem this together and try to close the gap back down to the young Polish player. Of course, a former pensionary, a former player of the Trackmania Grand League himself, Evan. He's very much accustomed to maps like these where there is a lot of finesse required and a lot of things that can happen at the wrong place at the wrong time, but he manages to make it stick. Melio forced to respawn. It's a 104.445 for Evan. Feed and Azion second and third will guarantee the draw.
Yeah, Evan there doing a really good job in the identity. I feel like he was safing it a tiny bit, but it's okay because he had so much of a lead that allowed him to really just anchor in that last turn and done well. So yeah, 104s again, definitely a good comfortable time for the level of these players. And of course, they could even challenge those Div 1 times, but we'll have to wait and see. You don't need to do it if your opponents are still behind you. And speaking of being behind, Melio and Evan currently fighting in P3 and P4. This is not a good position to be in, but we have seen the transition over and over again. Doing the two-wheeler trick, Melio, unfortunately, in the back, made a big mistake and started to flip over, so it's down to Evan once again to see if he can do any damage in this one and stop an ace from happening. And he's chasing on Azion, but Azion still has a pretty good lead. Feed ends up having an awkward dirt going up in the air a tiny bit with two wheels, so that's going to slow him down a little bit, but Feed's still able to be up in front. Azion is going to be there to even try and secure at least P1. Nicely done by all three players through the identity. So Evan not able to find an opening in the window, and that's going to be an ace for TempoBros.
And TempoBros finally getting the break they need to actually sprint away into the distance, as we do see Melio parked against the tree, trying to do a little bit of a standing burnout. Of course, it doesn't work like that in Trackmania, unfortunately for us. I would love to see a standing burnout in Trackmania when you actually park up against a wall or a tree and just spin the tires. But as I said, it doesn't work like that. That gearbox, that 5-speed auto, and that stadium car is not really taking a liking to that kind of behavior. As we go on to round number 4 here on Brazil, we'll be going along with Evan and go on board with him through the loop. We did see a great loop exit speed from Feed previous round. It looks as though it will be Evan on the backslide. He currently sits on around 205 at the top of the loop, whereas Feed in the previous round had 228 at the top of the loop. So he might have something that Evan currently doesn't have, but what Evan has is a better transition from checkpoint 5 to 6, allowing him to move up to 3rd compared to Feed, and his teammate Melio currently holds the lead, takes a bit of airtime, which actually eases up the setup a little bit for that double right-hander before checkpoint number 12. but he also has a handy lead of around a quarter of a second to deal with as we go towards the identity and that final glider section. He's also got his teammate Evon waiting to pounce and actually looking to try and make this a charge for another counter ace. Goes a bit inside of the gate of checkpoint 16 and will be reeled in by Feed as well before the final corner. Melio will guarantee the win and Feed will snipe Evon. I saw that coming from a mile away with how much speed Feed was carrying through that glider section. It will be TempoBros validating the draw and thus keeping their 3-point lead intact.
Yeah, Feed was just constantly pushing. He was so wide on every turn to try to get as much entry speed into every turn, and it ended up working out really well for him. And that's going to force the draw. Again, Ragnarok looking for any damage they can put onto the board. Currently an ace away from drawing this one, but Feed and Azion are going to be the ones up in front. Melio going to have to look for any kind of opening, try and reduce any airtime this track puts you through. His Feed goes flying away and has to respawn quickly. Very, it's a skill that people just don't ever think about, is being able to realize you're screwed. You have to respawn as fast as you can to get yourself back in. 2.4 seconds back, but I think Feed is going to be out of this one unless he pulls some miracle play in to the final part of the track, but it's not going to happen. Melio up against Azion and Evon. He's looking to just secure this P3, let Melio do the work at this point, put the pressure on. But Azion doing such a good job. Oh, the turn was not good, though. And 14 thousandths of a second made the difference as Melio was able to come around, get around that pole faster, and that's going to be a victory, but track point for TempoBros.
That late apex doing wonders at the final hairpin from Melio. You could all see that from his perspective. Does the Sanko go for a bit of a spike in that particular final hairpin and got so much speed on the exit to allow him to move into the lead and thus guarantee that victory, going the way of Ragnarok, who are now just 2 points behind. 200 at the top of the loop for Melio, but Feed again. Supreme amount of speed going through that loop will allow him to take the lead. Evon and Melio will be in hot pursuit, though, as Azion doesn't get the best of starts and will find himself around half a second down compared to the leading trio. Now over that glider section, Feed had a bit of a moment, of course, last time around. He was forced to respawn this time. He clears it, no big deal. Feed still in the lead. Evon with a little bit of airtime, trying to set himself up a bit better for the checkpoint 12 turn. He's still very much in the hunt. So is Melio. All three separated by less than a tenth of a second before checkpoint 13. Onto the dirt. Feed still leading, but he still has to keep himself on his toes. Of course, he cannot take anything for granted here as we go over the final glider. Great chicane on the part of Feed, who takes advantage of a bit of a sluggishness from Evon and Melio to just press B for boost and scamper into the horizon. He will clock in a 104.128. We're getting close to the .0s and maybe even the 103s. And with Evon and Melio still stuck in second and third, it will be a draw that still sees Ragnarok in the fight, but it will soon be win or bust for the red side.
I don't know if you saw that, but Azion was fighting from the back from pretty far away. And that almost made it back to at least get a victory. It was a very close moment. Azion was just pushing as hard as he can into the identity. And into the loop we go, and all the players are going to be getting through that one. Evon, unfortunately, is going to fall a little bit behind. Melio is going to be the one to try to do some work. But we need both of Ragnarok to be up in front if we want to see anything else come out of this, because if you get a victory as TempoBros, we're going to be moving on to map 3, and there's a chance we may see a 3-0 sweep again. Your morales tend to fall when you are on against a match point, but Evon's still doing a good job in the back, trying to push up against Feed. And Melio still putting pressure onto Azion, but Azion, Feed goes flying! Azion has proved time and time again that he can handle this identity very well, but he goes a little short on that one. Melio tries to get in, and Azion said, hold on, I got a PB to set 16 thousandths of a second difference between them. It's a draw and the final round of Brazil.
Yeah, it's win or bust as we anticipated for Ragnarok, and with the way that Azion defended his place towards the final end of the round, I think I can hear Reina Varys Jr. singing "No way in, no way out" somewhere in the distance as we go into what will be the final round here on Brazil. It could be either 2-0 for TempoBros, or we could wipe the sneak clean if Ragnarok managed to get the ace, but so far it looks as though that scenario might not be all that well on, although Azion had a short shocker of a start and will find himself 1.2 seconds down. Sorry, I was trying to find my bearings there. 1.5 tenths down on the rest of the field. Melio now under attack from Feed. They're going to go side by side. Evon needs to actually pick up the pace and turn up the heat a little if he wants to make this a potential ace scenario for Ragnarok. He's back in contention against Feed. He might have just answered the prayers of many fans of Ragnarok there as we go into checkpoint 14, over the beach, checkpoint 15, and into the glider. Feed versus Evon. This is really where the pivot has shifted towards in terms of the battle for survival and potentially the first map of the series for Ragnarok. Great chicane and great hairpin from Evon, and an unlikely come from behind battle comes to an end for the red side with a 104.228 for Melio, who finishes a 10th and a half ahead of his teammates. 10-9 for Ragnarok, who wiped the snake lead.
That is how you keep your composure. Nicely done by them. We did see TempoBros try and go for that little bit of a snipe at the end, but unfortunately, both players falling out of that one. One early, one late, and that's going to bring us on to our next track. We're going into map 3. We got a classic identity with the ice turnaround. Very fun identity. It's all about how much you can push yourself off with those icy wheels. And it's going to be, I think this one could be a bit of a spicy one, especially because ever since we discovered you can do the bug slide in this dirt turn here. We'll see if the players are going to even try to do that.
Yeah, it's been a very interesting one to see over the competitive lifespan of this map in the early part of the year, because especially later on during the round, there's still been some people that we've seen a bit of a divide of either going for the bug slide or going for the safer route, and it's been especially prevalent with Navi, actually, at the start of this season. Navi, Nuprime, and Mime opting to go for the safer route, whereas Binks and Gwen from AG Global, they were just on it, especially Gwen. His success rate on the bus slide has been phenomenal, and I wonder if we're going to be seeing the likes of that kind of success rate here on second division, as we seem to be missing Evon, and it looks as though we might be heading towards a technical pause in just a few seconds time, because you can see we are missing a player in the player count, so we're just going to be heading back towards our little cubby for a moment, just after we get the confirmation that the round will be paused. We hope that the admins should be on it in any point. You can see the drivers are standing at the starting line, not opting to get any mileage in. Azion does get a little bit further ahead, but he decides to go for the zigzag, trying to warm his tires. And yeah, this is just going to take a little bit, put the brakes a little bit on a 5-game series on a best of 5 that has been pretty exciting so far, it must be said.
Yeah, I mean, these matches, you know, the way TempoBros was playing earlier, G-Geek, I really thought that this, even though I did say I see a 3-1, I was kind of sweating and thinking, oh no, this might be a full sweep again. I really did want to see a good match out of them. So the fact that Ragnarok was able to kind of buckle down and get some work going at the moment really did make me feel happy. So again, it's a bit of a mix. You know, I did kind of talk down to Evon, unfortunately, at the beginning, because I haven't really seen him compete as much back in the day. You know, when he was back in, I believe, what was it, TMGLC, technically. Like, that was like the last time I really saw, you know, prime Evon. And then since then, he was more of like a sub going into 2023 and stuff like that. So it's just one of those things where I really wanted to see him step up, and that's exactly what he did. And it's a very important moment to be able to lock in and be able to do a lot of work like that. So happy to see how that happened. Ragnarok being able to tie up the series, but you know, we at least we get to see 4 maps this time, Gigi.
Yeah, true.
We're not just 3-0.
we get a 4th map locked in at the very least compared to yesterday. That's a bit of a definite step in the right direction. And yeah, it's right that you mentioned Evon is kind of like remembering, giving a little bit of remembrance to everybody else that forgot him. I'm loosely translating from a French expression, but you get the idea. He's showing that he can definitely compete when it matters the most. And of course, you did mention his 3rd place in TMGLC in the Challengers, but he also competed in Trackmania Grand League, of course, back in the early seasons in 2020, especially under the banner of Devils One, and also Team Secret, as a matter of fact. And yeah, it's always good to see that name pop up every now and again. Of course, in the early life cycle of Grand League, he was known under the nickname Martin until he adopted Evon before the fall 2020 season. But I wanted to do the presentations of the players before the match, but given how hectic the setup has been, we haven't had the time to do that. So yeah, of course, I wanted to talk a bit about Melio, because he's one of the guys that's kind of coming back to the Trackmania scene after taking a bit of a pause in 2025. Of course, the announcements of January have reawakened and picked up many people from the proverbial graveyard, as it seems like. And Melio is among those, but make no mistake, he's absolutely no slouch as the map is underway again as Evon is back on the server. And yeah, just again, Melio, winner of the the last homologated LAN of the 2024 World Tour. He is a two-time EU regional winner in Trackmania World Tour 23. That was alongside Matu, that's part of Serotonin Events and Ferox Industries. He knows how to play the format in 2v2, and he can definitely be back on his A game. As the round is underway so far, it's not been a bug slide laden round, and Azion and Evo will pick up the spoils and battle for the lead.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't need to do it, if your opponents aren't doing it, it should be fine. And it is working out a little bit more spread out than I would have imagined, especially because this was like one of the first tracks everyone was learning back in other competitions. So the fact that we're not seeing these players go practically on top of each other does surprise me a little bit. But it is a bit of a shorter track as we are going to be moving straight into the identity. And Evon makes a big mistake crashing out there. That's a little bit unfortunate. He's going to be slow going into the first boosters as we do the second turnaround here. You see the players do break a little bit early to try and get the car to rotate early and feed. A little bit scary there as we did see Melio get off the ice faster, but feed deeper into the boost. Did push him faster with more exit speed, and that allowed them to get an ace. TempoBros, again, looking like round one.
Yeah, and it's fair to say that it's a fine balancing act that you have to do in order to be able to go in deep enough but not too deep in the final booster. As we did see, Feed did not get the slide on the setup for the first corner, and thus will be left behind. And you could see, yeah, nobody doing the bug slide, nobody even daring to go for the bug slide setup. And Evon will take the lead after a little bit of attrition in the first few corners, which have claimed Melio and Feed. But Azion is currently still keeping the Polish player honest and actually seizing the lead almost at the end of that ice line. It does definitely seize it in that convex platform before checkpoint number 6. And we now go onto the third and final sector. Checkpoint 7, onto the long right-hander. It's not quite a hairpin, it's just a long sweeper where you just kind of like building up speed as you go. And then we go into the dirt of checkpoint number 8. We go a bit closer to the wall on the part of Azion, just carrying a lot more speed forward. Evon is being joined by his teammate Meno, but also it's a three-way fight for second place with Feed could potentially make things interesting and trying to transform a draw into a potential ace if he can get by the two Ragnarok players. First Evon, he makes quick work of it. Going on to the final turnaround, can Feed build enough speed to knife Melio on the line? No, Melio's got him. Melio's got him covered. More than enough. It will be a 105.958, and it will be a victory for the TempoBros, who now lead 5-1.
Oh, that is scary to see Feed. How much exit speed he was able to get out of both parts of the identity. The fact that he can really slingshot himself out of those boosts really come to show that you need to lock in, you need to create that space behind you if you have Feed the one tracking you, because of the fact that Feed was doing such a good job in the identity. But we are moving on into the next round, and Evon and Melio will be the ones to be leading us. Feed, again, in that scary striking distance for the identity, falling a little bit behind here, 0.1. But closing in the gap. Azion, unfortunately, is going to be the one that's going to fall far behind. So it's going to be up to Feed to deny Ragnarok an ace. And Feed is doing that right now as he's able to get into that P2. Looking to fight even to P1. Close to the flags is a very important thing to get better exit speed here. And here we go again. Feed is the one that we saw get so much exit speed. And just like that, 1 and 2 flies past both of them. Evon can't do anything. Azion, Melio ends up going way too shy. Evon doesn't have enough speed, and Feed, just like that, is going to be able to do a lot of work. And unfortunately, Melio went really shy into the boosters, and that allowed Azion to get up into P3, and that's going to be a victory.
Yeah, way too shallow. Not even past the first booster, and that's what allowed Azion to get the move on. And this time, Azion will be clipping at the apex of the first corner. But yeah, Azion again taking advantage of that very shallow entry into the booster from Melio to get past in third place. Because yeah, you could see the effect of going in too shallow or too deep in the booster does. You come virtually to a dead stop if you're going way too shallow and don't get even past the first booster. Melio will be trying to make amends, as right now it will be TempoBros on map point number 2. This is their first attempt at closing out the map, but right now it looks as though that scenario will not be on. And even though Feed has got the pocket on everybody else in that final part, the gap is just way too big at this point to really do anything about the Ragnarok lead, who might be looking to slash the gap back down to just 2 points of a deficit as we go towards checkpoint 9. Make sure to not go into the flag mask like we've seen plenty of times, a bit too often actually yesterday around, and it will be a bit of a safer approach into that first booster. They don't need to over push it, they don't need to go too deep into it and risk hitting the snow patch. It's perfect management on the side of TempoBros and of Ragnarok. TempoBros trying to go a little bit deeper with feed, but Ragnarok, with the lead that has been given to them effectively in the first few corners by TempoBros, will get one of the 2 counter aces they need and will slash the gap back down to 2 points.
Yeah, good turnaround for Ragnarok, but unfortunately what worries me is that it came down to errors coming from TempoBros. We want to see them be able to just, beat them on pace alone. Very important to be able to do that because of the fact that at that point, you're not playing a control game, as Melio and Feed both made the mistake. But Feed fell farther back, so we got a lot more boost out of that one. So it's going to be Azion versus Evon up in front. A little bit better exit speed for Azion to catch up to Evon. Evon is just surviving at this point. Azion clips. What is this round? It just amazes me how everything aligns. The stars align, the moons align, everything aligns, where for some reason when the first person makes a mistake, everyone makes a mistake in the round. But somehow it still turns around that Evon is able to stay up in front. Again, Feed and Melio in the back are going to be fighting each other, but a 0.7 difference is not going to make the biggest difference for them to fight it out. And Evon still doing a really good job staying up in front, not needing to push at all. And it's going to come down to whether or not Melio is going to be able to snipe, and no, unfortunately, still too far back. So it's going to be a draw. Ragnarok cannot allow many more of these draws to happen.
Yeah, to quote the great Slap Shoes, it's the case of a few people zigging when they should have zagged and the right people throwing their brain into a blender that just happened there in the previous round as we go into the second attempt at map point number 2 for TempoBros. Ragnarok still very much alive, maybe going back to that win or bust situation that they encountered on Brazil and where they thrived so much, especially with a great end of that round from Melio and Evon as well, who get a great fight back as we now go on to checkpoint number 4, sector number 2, the ice slide. We go close to hitting the girder on the attack of that ice slide for Evon. That was a little bit scary. And Melio, Feed, and Evon are actually regrouped within each other's ghost. This is looking very, very hotly contested right now, and Azion has no part to play in that. Feed also getting a little bit left behind as we go into checkpoint number 7, the start of sector number 3. Through the dirt, on the way uphill. We go for a bit of a late brush of the wall. Not quite a brush, but just skimming the wall whilst keeping all the speed. Oh, Melio going so close to hitting the wall at the chicane before the first ice turnaround. And watch out for Feed. We know how deep he can go and how much speed he can actually salvage. Elvon having to lift a little bit into that transition chicane. Might be compromising a bit of speed, but the ace will not be compromised for Team Ragnarok. Melio with a .747. He might be feeling like an airplane flying at this point on the track, even though it's quite a few tenths off away from the world record. But right now it's Ragnarok flipping the script on its head, and now they're on their first attempt of map point number 2, and they need to simply, well, they can get away with a victory or a draw in order to validate that second map in the books.
Yeah, and this is what I wanted to see from Ragnarok. This is the Ragnarok I expected to see. They need to be able to win on pace alone, and they're doing such a good job doing that, G-Geek. And it's gonna... Oh, no, we lost one player. Not sure what happened.
I'm not sure what happened there. We get a nice slight from Feed as well, but that seems to be under his own power. Oh, we have lost Melio indeed, and this looks like we might be heading into overtime a bit, unfortunately, as the mishap happened in the midst of the round after sector number 1 was done. So I'm not exactly sure how things will stand at this point, if we're going to get a round skip or whatever, but yeah, this is an unfortunate one to have happen for Ragnarok, which does hamper their chances a fair bit. Melio is back on the server now, so that's going to be potentially one round lost, or if we're going to be able to roll that back, we're not sure. But for now, if we count this round, it will be an overtime situation with Azion taking the win with a .266, Evon second place, and Feed down in third. But yeah, Melio, that was very strange. I think you all saw it on the broadcast. There was a freeze, and then all of a sudden we completely lost connection with him at any kind of moment. And there we go. This is the first overtime of the day here, and I think the first overtime of the weekend overall here on Overdrive. And yeah, Ragnarok had to mulligan that one. Let's hope they can actually parlay that into a win, although Melio, with a brief rush of the wall in the dirt, is going to be leaving his teammate trying to anchor a second overtime round possibly.
Yeah, this is going to be very important for Evon if they want to avoid giving the map away. Evon's going to have to hold this lead the entire time. And yeah, Melio is pretty much out of it at this point. He had to respawn once again, as we saw on the top. So Evon now playing the front roll once again. Feed following very closely. A bit of an awkward dirt entrance there for Evon. Allows Feed to close the gap in even closer. But Evon doing a good job getting a farther, going farther into that turn. And this is where things are going to get interesting, because we have seen how good both the TempoBros can go real deep into the booster. But Evon, I think, will have enough there, and we are going to be seeing a second round of overtime, as Azion just needs to make sure to get in, and he did. So yeah, second draw and overtime again. And G-Geek, this is coming into a game of who makes more mistakes or who gets disconnected more.
Yeah, well, we hope it's not going to be the latter, but it definitely showcases the another facet that I really liked about 2v2, the synergy between the two players, and also the fact of having a dependable teammate. Dependability is the key here, because it doesn't matter whether you're first or last. It doesn't matter if you're off the pace compared to your opposition. It's very much important to get to the finish line first. You know the saying, to finish first you have to finish. It's very much a perfect example of what we witnessed here for Ragnarok, as Evon was able to anchor that first place, and now it's going to be Ragnarok on the chase against Feed, who will now have to take the role of the anchor for TempoBros as he goes very close to the inside wall on the approach to checkpoint number 8. Feed still in the lead, but for how long? Here comes the attack from Melio and Evon. They're piling the pressure on the man from TempoBros, who is currently sliding back down the field and even overtaken by his own teammate for P3. They're gonna have to pull something special or pray for very significant mistakes on the part of Ragnarok if TempoBros wants to lead 2-1, but it looks as though it will not happen. Feed even touches the snow patch behind the boosters. Evon and Melio, Evon clocking in a new personal best as well of a .703, Melio a .823, 14-11 for Ragnarok, who take the lead in this series.
I think the craziest part about it is the fact that sometimes, you know, when disconnects happen, when your computer is starting to become unreliable, it starts to, usually it would start playing kind of that mental factor, right? Like, please survive for the rest of the match. Please don't die on me. And we usually see players struggling a little bit rebounding from these moments, right? Like, they start to lose the momentum. Your hands start to get cold as you're trying to reconnect. Ragnarok did such a good job not allowing any of that to affect them. If anything, they were able to turn it around, and maybe it was TempoBros were the ones that were starting to get the cold hands as all the disconnects happened. But you know, it happens, unfortunately, but we are moving on into US of A. And yeah, this is my track. This is my home turf, even though this is looking more like Arizona with Hollywood signs. A little confusing.
Arizona... would that make it Nevada? Question mark?
Yeah, I guess we're in Nevada, but
and before everyone from Vegas gets pissed off.
Yeah, no, and I'm like sitting here, I'm seeing all the signs, and I'm just kind of like, cool, why are we in the desert if it's Hollywood signs? It should be city-like and everything. I don't know. This is what happens when you don't have an American make a USA map, all right?
Hey, don't blame me. I'm just an observationist, if that's even the real word. But yeah, this is the atmosphere is quite something. But of course, this map being a modern interpretation, especially in the identity of Vantaneo, one of the Winter 2021 Trackmania Grand League maps. This was a very different time in the game's life cycle, at a time when a certain team named McLaren Shadow was involved in the game, along with Kappa. And a bit of a personal fun fact, I had the honor of casting for them at that particular season. In the meantime, it's not going to be that much of an honor for Melio to be the first one to break traction and actually be forced to respawn before even the quarter pipe rings the bell.
Too.
And Evon as well messes up the quarter pipe, and so it will be pretty much a buy round for TempoBros at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it's a free round. You get that one. I do see someone in the chat saying, why is there ice in the desert? Hey, listen, I don't know about your deserts, but here in America, nighttime in the desert, it is freezing. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some ice left over. Should be melted by now, but it's fine. But yeah, we're going into the little pre-identity with the hills here. But nothing too much around this round right now. Melio and Evon, 7, 8, 9, 10 seconds behind at this point. It's not going to make too much of a difference. These guys could just walk it on in, take a free ace at the beginning. I mean, TempoBros is pretty much gone in the first ace of every single track at this point, so no surprise there.
No big surprise there, considering the
Whee!
various trials and tribulations. We've seen that airtime happen so often because you have, if you want to go for the full snipe there, if you're coming from like slightly behind, you have to attack so much, and you run the risk of going a little bit too high too early, and then you get that airtime, and you land sideways on the plastic, and then you hit a bit of scaffolding, clip the scaffolding with the left rear, and yeah, this is pretty much just bad news bears. Even worse when you full stop into the finish gate and don't get one of the wheels to hit the finish trigger. I've seen that happen so many times. It's always such a heartbreaking thing to see. As we go into round number 2, going to the quarter pipe, Evon again doesn't even get the rotation in the quarter pipe. What happened? It seems as though Ragnarok are completely fumbling this one, and looks like we might be heading to France as a decider.
I'm guessing. I mean, technically, this was a TempoBros.
True.
Yes, it was. So maybe this was, I've heard of the strategy of sometimes, there's just one map you're going to throw. You're just going to focus on 4 of the 5 tracks, right? So that way you are like at peak condition on those tracks. And then from there, you just play the gamble game, praying that this track never lands in a match, a full match point position. And luckily for Ragnarok, they were able to set it up where this track is not in a match point position. So if anything, maybe they both just didn't train this track as much, and they're just kind of letting it happen and move it on into France. Who knows at this point?
Yeah, and maybe Ragnarok are taking this one as a bit more of a practice map, and thinking, yeah, okay, we might just be a bit beat on that particular 4th map from TempoBros. Might as well just take the time. It's kind of like using, I hate to say that, but kind of like using a Grand Prix as a practice session in a sense. You always hate to have to do it, but I'm like, whatever, it's more data, so we can be prepared for the next round. So I feel like that might be more the mentality that Melio and Evon are taking here as we go into round number 3. So, is third time the charm for the quarter pipe? Actually, let's see. Evon this time gets the proper jump, gets the proper landing. He makes it through.
Never mind.
Oh boy. Okay, I had a bit of a heart flutter.
Spoke a little early there.
Yeah, I cried victory a little bit too early, and Feed briefly brushes the wall in checkpoint 5. What happens there?
He just went wide on the dirt. Unfortunately, just could not get his wheels under him, and that's just going to throw him into P3, as Evon is going to be building a little bit more of that speed, maybe to catch up to Feed, because he is getting closer. But speaking of closer, G-Geek, Azion and Melio up in front.
This is looking very, very racy now. Going towards the identity, you can't go a little bit too much on the attack and clip the helpers, and that is, of course, bad news bears. And also getting the nose slide there would be very much a pity, as we see Azion again. That slight side-to-side slide when you actually reach the top of the hill before the finish is a bit scary, but Azion controlled it nicely with a new personal best as well, getting into the 102.7 to 0.709. And also, one thing that I'm noticing, that I've noticed a couple minutes ago, as we go on to track point attempt number 2 for TempoBros, is the world record. It's been like in the 0.3s, if I recall correctly. That was Gwen that held it. Now we're into the 0.2s. Nyko having put something special with a 0.297.
I'm not surprised. Nyko is that guy. He can easily snipe anyone's world record if he puts his mind to it. But hey guys, I think you missed the mark. Brazil was like 2 maps ago, and well, we got a Brazil on the scoreboard, 7-1 for TempoBros, looking to ace this one and close this one out, because Ragnarok has just not been able to sort of say lock in on this track. Evon just barely surviving the half pipe this time, so he's finally in the race. And then, as I say that, sorry, just had to cast a curse, and don't make me get the tinfoil hat again, please. I don't want to wear that; it gets hot. But Azion doing a good job being up in front. Feed and Melio are going to be the ones fighting into the identity, and unfortunately, Feed is going to clip that identity. May be able to still hold on to that P2 or P3, excuse me, and a PB from Azion again. What the heck is going on? These guys are just kicking it with the wait, is that? No, it's not world record, but
no.
Dang.
But yeah, PB by a 10th second consecutive PB, and yeah, Azion slowly turning up the heat a little and getting a bit more familiar with this track as time goes on. Maybe we even see a 0.5 or a 0.4 from Azion. We'll have to wait and see until the end of this round, which will likely be the final round given the dynamic of this map at this point. 9-2 for the TempoBros, who are looking to take this on to Game 5, which will be happening on France. As a quick reminder, as we go to the quarter pipe, a bit of a slow entry for Feed, but gets a nice, beautiful landing out of that. Although with that speed loss. He will be quite a far ways back, 3/10 down at the end of sector number 1. As we go into the dirt, make sure to avoid brushing the wall on the exit. We've seen plenty of people do that, including Feed a bit earlier on. Oh, barely clipping the top of the barrier for Melio, and that's going to be compromising his jumping to checkpoint 6. Yeah, and that's the worst thing that you could possibly have. Trying to go for that low jump at the exit of checkpoint number 5. The dirt flick goes through clean for Azion and Evon. Melio fell foul of that dirt flick, and was the first player to actually fall foul of it by clipping the breeze block on the outside at the exit. As we now see Evon trying to catch up with Azion. It's more of a battle for honor in a sense, trying to uphold the individual honor of the Ragnarok team, but a clip from Evon is going to seal the deal, and Azion clocking in at 0.819 and just clipping on the inside of the right front with the right side of the plastic block, compounding the misery, adding insult to injury, allowing TempoBros to get the ace. It will be a 12-2 scoreline here on USA. We've seen maps being traded back and forth, and actually both of the teams have won both their map picks, so I guess logic gets respected, and we now go on to France, a modern interpretation of the Fall 2020 Trackmania Grand League map, which was half-pipe by Kisla, my beloved. You can fit so many Tony Hawk references in that bad boy. This was the OG skate before skate was even a thing, guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, the half-pipe. Not surprised there. I actually find it quite enjoyable that it's here in France, especially because of the fact that so even though it's half pipes and it looks like skates, I just love the idea of like how you were jumping up and down a lot, because of the fact that it reminds me a little bit of not the track parkour, but the feeling of parkour. And seeing that parkour was literally originated in France just makes complete sense to me.
It makes so much more sense indeed.
Yeah.
But yeah, also I'm wondering if we're going to be seeing people going for that nose slide that you can do in that long dirt turn at checkpoint number 4. And one of the main guys that I saw pulling it off in other competitions was Mudda, who has been able to time the nose slide so precisely that every time he did it, and every time he was successful with it, which was pretty often, he would gain 15 to 20 kph, which is a different number over in the other measurement system. But yeah, he could get so much more speed compared to the rest of the fields. And when you get to the platform at checkpoint 5, he is back in first, just like that. And now we go to the identity, just a little bit of a gander of what you can do. You can go two ways, either go for the conventional strike, which is right, left, or right, left, which is what I call the alternative strategy, which is ultimately faster, but also more prone to potential slowdowns if you don't get the proper setups for it. As we go now to game 5, this is it, randomize. The clean slate has been achieved over the course of the last 4 maps. It's winner takes all here on France.
Yeah, and I find it very ironic that you have an American and a French caster coming in on the last 2 maps of USA and France, and we are making sure to stay on the script as Melio is going to be the one up in front. Evon is going to be sandwiching the 2 TempoBros in the middle. Bede and Azion are going to be looking to see if they can strike at any moment, but Melio doing such a good job staying up in front, and Evon is going to be joining the pack now as things get very tight. Azion and Feed with more exit speed. Melio is going to end up falling a little bit behind, but Evon able to fight in there. Unfortunately, we lost Feed into that transition.
Feed touched the top of the barrier, actually.
Oh, did he? Oh, it was so hard to tell because all the ghosts were on the inside. But here we go into the identity. We are going to be skating on the half pipes. Everyone opts to stay onto the right side as we go one more time, and it's not actually looking good for Melio, who got a bit of a rough landing. That's going to send them into the back. PBs for everyone. But Ragnarok is going to be the ones to fall a little early in this first one.
Well, not quite for everyone. It feels like Opera was a little bit sketchy with that one. Didn't hand PBs to everyone, but still PBs into the 107.3s for the top 2 finishers as we go into round number 2. The victory for the TempoBros, which sees them take an early lead, but we've seen that plenty of times again. The lead can shift around so much, especially on fronts. If you go a bit too wide here, checkpoint 3, you run the risk of getting airtime and being forced to respawn. Here, unfortunate clip at the bottom of that little platform, and Azion as well. And now the turns have tabled, ladies and gentlemen. Melio and Evon side by side taking the lead. And yeah, that was an unfortunate clip for Feed. The same kind of clip that Elcon had during the DreamHack Birmingham qualifier, where he went just a bit too low, and Elcon was a bit more egregious of a low dip. But here, that's just the bare list of low dips on the left-hand side, but that was enough for the inside of the tire, the sidewall, to clip the edge of the platform, and that was the end of the round for Feed and Ozion, compounding the misery of TempoBros here in this round with a respawn of his own. As we go towards the identity, Melio having to go for the safe strat. Same for Evon. They can't afford to do that. It's a 6.5 second gap. They don't have to push it all to try and go for low elapsed times. They can just go to the finish, just safe, just like that. 108.480. Not great, not terrible in this context compared to the TempoBros, and it will be Ragnarok in the lead by 2 points.
Yeah, and then how it's amazing to see. You said the turns have tabled and how the foot and the other shoe, and now Ragnarok is the one leading the match. We haven't really seen them take a good definitive lead against TempoBros, and maybe something that they would like to see, especially because of the fact that, you know, when you're playing on that back foot, it is not fun. It is a lot of extra pressure on you. Of course, it feels nice when you do win off the back foot, but we are in map 5, and again, you really do want to set yourself up nicely moving on into the league. I mean, we're in this week 1, 2, we're... Evon unfortunately goes flying away. But yeah, you want to really set up this lead, and Azion, speaking of setting up a lead, up in front, and Feed ends up smacking the nose against the barrier, and that's going to allow Evon to maybe catch up. Yeah,
well,
no,
Evon is in third. Yeah, Feed having to go double respawns.
Yeah, so it's a little unfortunate for him. So Azion now, with a little bit of extra wiggle room, Melio is going to go the safe way through the identity. It's not going to be enough for either of them to catch up, so that's going to be Azion up in front. Evon just looks to close this one out to make sure that it stays a draw, and that's going to allow Ragnarok to continue to hold the lead 3-5.
Not gonna lie, I don't know if you've seen that. Well, we weren't on the perspective of Melio, but you might have seen that clip at the final transfer from Azion. It was looking sketch. I'm just gonna say that with the way that the right front clipped, and yeah, he lost a fair bit of speed, but had enough gap, of course, to see Melio coming. So that draw was secure for the TempoBros. They still find themselves 2 points behind Ragnarok at the moment, and they're gonna have to somewhat get their act together if they really wish to try and take this series 3-2 as we go into the next round. It will be Azion, Evon, Feed battling for the top positions, and Melio being left behind at the start of the map, checkpoint 4. He will be 3/10 down compared to the leading trio, and nobody at any point is going for the no slide strategy. It just seems as though they are not really having the fingers, they don't have the proper setups. They're not really feeling like risking it, because if you mess up that no slide, you can risk clipping at the inside if you go a little bit too deep, and also you're not going to stand to benefit from that much. If you slide too much, you're still going to be losing a lot of time if you don't get the no slide correctly. So everybody opting for the safer approach. Azion in the lead now. Evon under pressure, trying to prevent the counter ace from happening on the side of TempoBros. The top 3 likely to go for the alternative strat, yes, but Evon is slow on the first transfer and on the second transfer as well. The counter ace will be validated either way. Azion and Feed in that order will finish the round. 107.263 for Azion. This is stout. Even though it's not quite a 106, it's still a very, very solid round time to go wide. 6-5.
Yeah, no, really good play for TempoBros to be able to turn this one around. Again, Ragnarok now having to fight from behind. Again, this is just not a position they want to be. We are here on map 5. This is it, folks. You want to set yourself up nicely. Now, there is no track point at the moment. Everything has been fine at the moment because of the fact that only 3 points is enough. But that could put TempoBros at 9 if they can get the ace in this round. It's going to be very important for them, as we are going to be coming up into the very high-speed moment. Flying into the dirt, try to get as much exit speed, and Evon ends up clipping his back wheel, and then we end up getting another clip as well. Feed falls behind. So that's going to be Melio. Oh no, just every round someone just can't make that jump cleanly. And as I spoke earlier, an ace would be very nice for TempoBros, and G-Geek, it's looking like an ace is about to happen.
Yep, it is looking like an ace is about to happen. Handed on the silver plate, it must be said, because Azion had to push a fair bit. It was looking very, very solid until Sector 3 rang the bell, and we've seen that in previous competitions. Sector 3 here on France is really where all the chaos ensues. It did. TempoBros 9, Ragnarok 5. And this is going to be quite the feat that Ragnarok need to accomplish. It's ace or bust, not once, but twice. They need to get back-to-back aces if they want to get back in this and try to actually pull a bit of an upset, because Azion and Feet look to have been the stronger team overall. Ragnarok always having had to do come-from-behind efforts there, trying to salvage a couple of maps in there. Evon already on the back foot, 4 seconds down, and it looks as though it might be all she wrote for the red side. Going to checkpoint number 4. It will be just a safe approach for Azion, Melio, and Feed. 1, 2, 3. The GGs are starting to be pronounced, I'm guessing, for some of the supporters there. As we go into checkpoint number 2, checkpoint 3 also coming up. And we go for not quite the full slingshot, but Azion going pretty close to the wall as well. Looking for, trying to go for maybe a bit of an improvement of PB. Feed tips the top of the barrier just like he did a couple of rounds ago. But he can just rely on his teammate. As long as they finish first and third, or second and third, if it's a draw pronounced, then it will still be a validated round win, and of course map win and match win for the TempoBros. Melio versus Azion. Azion will be clipping in the middle part of the identity, so Melio will get the individual round win and kind of uphold the honor of Ragnarok with a time of a .388. So Azion might have been on another .2 there. That would have been stout as well from the man from TempoBros, but it is a draw that validates the score of a 10-6 and a final score of 3-2. So ultimately we may have been a bit harsh on Ragnarok, it must be said, randomized, because we were thinking, yeah, this is going to be more likely a TempoBros 3-0, but in the end, everybody managed to get their own map picks, and we got a pretty good series. It just sort of fell apart. The Crocon Bush kind of sort of fell on the floor for Ragnarok as we headed onto France, but still, nothing to scoff at this particular moment in time.
No, nothing to scoff off at all. I mean, like I said, I thought it was going to be a 3-1. So the fact that Ragnarok was able to take a second map is a big deal. It's very good for them. But yeah, I think, you know, overall, I think Ragnarok, unfortunately, just had a little bit too many mistakes. I really did think they could turn it around, upset everything, and take that win. So unfortunately, they're going to have to wait for their next match to be able to do that. But GG's to both teams. You know, G-Geek, they both played very well.
Yeah, they both played very, very well, and of course, kudos for Ragnarok for the back-to-back snipes. Well, especially Melio for that great performance on Brazil, and the final ace to really give a bit of a sucker punch to TempoBros' efforts to try and make it a 3-map deal, which of course did not happen, as you were able to see. We're going to be heading into our next game in a little bit. Now, we did have some fits and starts because, yeah, as we said, there was some availability issues, but those are being resolved by this moment. And yes, indeed, Vin, Ragnarok did win on a score of no, it is TempoBros that won with a score of 3-2.
Yep.
Yeah, TempoBros did win on a score of 3-2. Next up will be the second game of the day, which we'll be seeing the Ragnarok team again. They don't have to wait too long to actually play another match because they are going to be playing against Team Halcyon, Fegley, and Nixonica. This is giving me throwbacks of Trackmania Challenger League Fall 2021 randomize.
Yeah, I mean, we are starting to see some very familiar names, but I do think, G-Geek, we will have to go to a quick break as we are going to do a little bit of a production swap, so the stream will go off for just a moment. Don't panic. We'll be right back, folks.
Yep. Stay with us.